my thesis really is that medicine needs healing, and I think medicine needs healing in more than one way. I think it needs to heal itself, but I think it also needs healers as part of its armamentarium, and that's my thesis. And I suppose that I would like to see a change of attitude within my profession of medicine. So what I want to do this evening, if I may, is be quite self-centered and tell you a little bit about myself first and how I got to this strange position, because it is an unusual position for a doctor to move towards healing. And then tell you a little bit of detail about one of the research projects that I and colleagues undertook. So the book documents several different projects that we've been involved in, but I'm just going to mostly talk about one of them this evening. So I'll start with telling you a little bit about myself, if I may. I'm obviously immensely old, and I qualified in medicine in 1970, and you know, that was a very different time in so many ways, and I was pleased to be a doctor. I was happy with my career choice, and went happily forward in a medical career, and in conventional terms I did okay. I was appointed Professor of Rheumatology at a fairly young age in Bristol University, and held that position for quite a while, and I took a special interest in a condition called osteoarthritis, and my group in Bristol became well known for its work on osteoarthritis. We were, as I say, in conventional terms, we were doing okay, and I had become enculturated into medical science. I was a part of it. I believed in it. I thought that all these alternative therapies were nonsense, and I can remember giving talks earlier in my life where I pointed out how nonsensical some of them were, based on a complete lack of understanding, of course, of those particular forms of therapy. But that's how it is in medicine. It is incredibly narrow in its perspective. It is incredibly simplistic, really, in its one single scientific approach. But it's seductive, it works, it's very effective for a lot of things, and it's easy to get completely pulled into it. And I was playing with chemicals in laboratories and all sorts of strange things of that sort. And that was all fine until I had a mid-career crisis. So I had a somewhat unusual career break at the age of 44. I was taken hostage off a plane that was trying to go to Kuala Lumpur, but tried to refuel in Kuwait as the Iraqis invaded Kuwait. And some of you may know the story. It's been in the news a bit of late. But all the people on the plane were taken hostage. Women and children were let out after a while, but simple males like myself, we were kept for the best part of 5 months in not very good conditions. And that was a bit of a fixer, really. But it wasn't so much that experience in itself, it was things that went with it at the time and indeed afterwards. I had some strange experiences, some spiritual experiences, some odd things that happened, which I probably would have dismissed as some sort of aberration or having a little fit or something if they'd happened earlier, but they confronted me in a way that was different, and they made me eventually reappraise my position. So there were several of them. I will, if I may, tell you about one particular one that had a big impact on me. So for a number of weeks I was held in a small 2-bedroomed bungalow in Kuwait docks with 7 other men. And we weren't given much food or anything, and we weren't let out mostly, so it was pretty grim. But the flat had paper and pencils that we found in it. We actually managed to get previous owner's computer working as well. So and there were some books, so we weren't completely without things to get on with. And most of us, including myself, tried to keep a diary of what was happening using the paper and pencils that we found in the flat. And one morning in September, this is in September of 1990, late September, I was writing my diary, sitting at a table there writing my diary in what was kind of a habit by then. And I was suddenly completely overcome with a sense of dread, of loss, of disaster that was very, very intense. And I was fairly sure it was from my father, who was trying to contact me. And it overwhelmed me so much that I stopped writing mid-sentence. And I actually never wrote in that diary again. So I know exactly when I stopped writing it. I know the date, I know the time, because I kept the bits of paper. And about 3 months later, when I was coming home, I learned that that was the day my father had died. Now, those sort of experiences, they're called shared death experiences in the academic realm. I didn't know about them before this. I didn't know things like that could happen. I didn't know that we were all connected in strange ways that make no sense to medical science. I knew none of that. But this was evidence for it. And if that can occur, my father was 3,500 miles away. And if he could contact me in that way as he was dying, you know, you kind of have to reappraise life, really. You have to reappraise what's going on in this world. The medical story that consciousness is a product of the brain is no longer really tenable. Now, that was not the only experience, but I just tell you that one to give you a flavour of the sort of thing that changed my world. So, when I came back, I was a bit of a mess, not surprisingly, and I had to heal myself, amongst other things, and kind of pick up the threads of life. I was 44 at the time. All I knew was medicine. I had 2 children at school who wanted to go to university. So they needed some financial support from their father. My lovely wife had kept them going in my absence. So I went back to work after a bit, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I didn't really feel that being a body mechanic was right anymore, and just being a body mechanic. So as doctors, we get taught to be body mechanics. So, you know, it's like a car mechanic, and it's very different, bit different from a car mechanic, because car mechanics often know quite a lot about all the bits of the car, but body mechanics, doctors, hospital doctors like me, they don't. One knows about the brakes, one knows about the carburetor, one knows a bit about the engine or something. And they don't understand the other bits. So I knew something about the infrastructure of the body and its bones and joints, but I didn't know anything else. And that disconnected, strange way of looking at how we treat illness no longer worked for me. I couldn't just stick with that. I realised that I had to shift, but shifting's difficult. If you're in medicine and you need a salary, you can't say, oh, I'm going to go and work on healing, because there's no jobs and no research money either. So that wasn't going to work. So I found a different sort of job that was more research management, and from that position I was able to change my interests to things that made more sense to me by then. This was slow, this was over a period of years. But I changed to things, I got funding for a big project on dignity in healthcare, because that seemed to be more sense than looking at molecules. And I started work on the placebo effect. Is everybody familiar with the placebo effect? Yeah, I see nods. So it's a rather strange phenomenon where you give something with no so-called active ingredient in it, and people get better. Or more interestingly perhaps, they get a lot worse, which is called the nocebo effect, which is actually 5 times more powerful than the placebo effect. And this is what I got working on with some PhD students, and we found that this is extraordinary, really. We found that teachers knew this, but of course doctors didn't. Teachers know that if you tick a child off, it would take 5 compliments to make up for the one ticking off. The ticking off is 5 times more powerful than the praise. Well, the same is true of placebo and nocebo. So if a doctor says something that's misinterpreted as a patient as a negative, that's incredibly powerful negatively on them. And nobody knows how or why that works, I don't think. Well, they didn't when I stopped working on it. By then, I mean, I don't mean that. So we got interested in that, and this whole area is a bit mysterious, I think it's fair to say, but very interesting. So what we were able to show is things like this, that if a doctor was to say to somebody, oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, the doctor might be saying that in attempt to reassure. You know, I can't find any disease, I don't think you've got a cancer, is what that might mean. But the patient might interpret that as, oh, he thinks I'm a fraud. He doesn't think I've got any problems. And that can induce a terrific nocebo effect and make the patient much worse. So we're working on that sort of stuff, and it was kind of a bit of a shortcut from there to go to what I was really interested in was what healers were doing in healing. And that accorded with the fact that my medical colleagues dismiss healing as just the placebo effect. When they talk about the placebo effect, it's always just the placebo effect. It's always got that extra little word in it, which is quite interesting. So then I was lucky enough, I think it was 2008 or 2009, I can't remember quite which, to get a post in Exeter University, where I was already in my early 60s. They said I could come there and I could do what I like. Now, that doesn't happen in our profession, really. I'm not sure it happens in anybody's profession. So they said come. It was then the Peninsula Medical School. The dean, who was a mate of mine, it's terrible, isn't it? Said, yeah, come and work for us, Paul, if you're fed up with where you are, and you can do whatever you like. Of course, you'll have to have an interview, he said. So I had an interview, and I thought, well, I better come clean. So they asked me in the interview, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to research healing. And I thought, that's it, that'll have blown it. But no, they said, it was a bit of a sort of swallowing, and really. But they let me do that, and they stuck with their word. They let me do that. So I had 10 or 11 years able to research healing. It was hard to get research money, but we did manage to get some. I'm supported by a not-for-profit institution in the States, particularly the Nova Institute for Health. Got funding off 1 or 2 other bodies so that we could do healing research. Now, in our field, the rules are, when you start a research project, is that you do what's called a literature review first. So you're supposed to find all the literature and review it and see what it says. So I thought, well, I better start with a literature review of healing. That's completely impossible. Completely impossible. A couple of colleagues here know more about this than I do. Because, of course, it's all over the place, and it doesn't follow academic rules. So I learned quite a lot looking at the literature, but a literature review was not a sensible concept. So what else could I do? Well, talk to people. So I talked to quite a lot of people, and I talked to quite a lot of healers, and I was started to get a feel of what might be going on, and it certainly wasn't just placebo. But there's a funny rule to life, I think, not rule, a funny facet of being human, which is that experience trumps knowledge. So if you experience something, that takes precedence over anything you might think you know intellectually. The real understanding of healing started when I experienced it. So I'll tell you one of those experiences now. So I've mentioned I was an osteoarthritis doctor, and I've got osteoarthritis, which seems a bit unfair, really. But there you go. And I have osteoarthritis in my knees, and this was about 12 years ago, I think. I can't remember quite when it was, but it was soon after I started working next. It was really bad, and I was in a lot of pain, and I was hobbling about, and I had an X-ray done, which is one of the things you do, and it looked awful. And I went to one of my orthopedic colleagues and said, well, what do you think of this? And he examined my knee, looked at the X-ray, and said, oh my goodness, it needs replacing. I'll do it straight away for you if you like, Paul. You're a colleague. I'll fit you in straight away. Well, that's a terrible thing in itself, but we'll pass over that. That he was willing to queue jump me, in other words. I mean, it's before there were the big queues there are now, which is unacceptable, but he was still willing to do me quickly. And I said, well, I'm a bit busy at the moment. And one of the bit busy things was I'd arranged to go and see a healer, to interview a healer a few days later. I went to this healer, lovely lady, practicing from her own home beneath the radar like so many healers. And I went in and I sat down with her and explained that I'd like to do a recorded interview with her. And she said, oh, well, okay, but you know, you can only understand healing if you experience it. Have you got anything you'd like me to have a go at? So I said, well, I've got this knee that's rotten. She said, oh yeah, have a go at that. She said, sit down on the couch here next to me and roll your trouser leg up. Really? She didn't say take your trousers off. Anyway, so I rolled my trouser leg up, and she put her hands on my knee. And the next bit's difficult to explain, but she left the room. She disappeared. So she was bodily there, her hands were on my knee, but she was not there. The essence of her was not there. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe some people here understand this better than I do, but she had disappeared. And it was very odd. My knee felt very strange. But you know how life is. My head was whirring. I was thinking, oh, damn, I've left the recorder on, and you know, it's wasting the battery, and things like that. But, yeah. And so anyway, eventually she came back into the room, and she looked really exhausted. And she said to me, my goodness, that's a bad knee. And I kind of knew that. And she said, hard work. She said, I can have one more go today if you like, but I won't be able to get it completely better. But I can have one more go and help you a bit more today. And then we'll see where we are. And the same thing happened. Hands on my knee felt really weird and warm and peculiar, and she wasn't there. And then she came back and she looked completely drained, and she said that's all she could do today. Now, I'm an osteoarthritis of the knee doctor, and I'd seen my X-ray. This is nonsense. This can't possibly make any difference to my knee. This can't possibly be right. But it was. My knee was a lot better after that, and I've never had it replaced, and I'm standing in front of you now. So that was experience of it, which trumps the knowledge. And I went on from there to actually do a course in how to be a healer, because I thought that, you know, I need this experience. I need to understand things that people were talking about, like chakras and auras and balancing energy. And I went on a course, and I learnt a lot of those things. And I was told on the course that I was probably quite a powerful healer if I wanted to be, which scared me, frankly. I've healed a horse in the past, but I haven't tried with people because I'm a bit frightened of it, which is a peculiar disjunction of my two worlds, I suppose, dissonance between my two worlds. But obviously these experiences made it quite clear that healing is a reality and important and can be extraordinarily valuable to people.
Excuse me?
please.
I'd be interested in knowing how it went with the horse and what and how.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I thought if I just drop that in, someone's bound to ask. But so, the technique I was taught was about sort of centering yourself and grounding yourself and being in contact with the higher universe, if you like, and then making a connection with the other living thing and allowing the other living thing to be a part of you and taking it from there. And one of the healers I was connected with was a horse healer, and I was still a bit skeptical at that stage, and I said, not sure I understand that. She said, well, you know, come down to my stables and I'll show you. And I thought she meant I'll show you. And she took me to the stables, and there were 3 big horses prancing around there. I don't like horses. They're big and scary. And she said, that one, Paul, I want you to heal that one. Me? I don't know what I'm doing. She said, well, just do what you were taught and it'll all be fine. And I did, and I did all the connection, grounding stuff. And then I created the bubble, if you like, for want of a better word, that the horse and I could be a part of. And we were suddenly as one. The horse and I were suddenly as one. Mind-blowing thing. And the horse went all relaxed, and I forget what horses do. The ears go up or the ears go down or something when they're relaxed. I don't know. I know nothing about horses. But anyway, it did all what it was supposed to do with relaxation, and it nearly fell over, and the lady said, stop, disconnect, because I don't want it falling over. And I said to her, so you did that, didn't you? I was thinking, it's too scary. And she said, no, that was entirely you. How are you feeling? And I said, well, I've got terrible stomachache. And she said, oh, good. Yes, I didn't tell you that, but that horse's problem is a stomach problem. You've taken some of that on board. You'll have healed it. She actually made me connect a second time just to prove to me that it was me and I could do it. So that's it. It's tricky stuff, isn't it? I'll tell you briefly about one of our research projects, if I may, that we did. So a burning question for us around all this is, I say us, a small group of people I was working with, is what is healing? Because you know, we use the word to mean all sorts of different things. We use it as a noun, a verb, an adjective. We use it for people, planets, all sorts of different things. What is healing, and what do people think healing is? And we decided to try and find out. So we actually worked with 3 groups of people. We've worked with healthcare professionals, we've worked with healers, self-professed healers, and with the general public, trying to find out what they think healing is. I'll tell you about the healthcare professionals first, because that's probably the most amusing. So trying to find out what healthcare professionals think about healing, and I started in Exeter talking to medical audiences about healing. But that's a bit like coming out, you know, because you're kind of leaving the normality of your profession to say you're interested in healing. And what would happen with medical audiences, whatever the nature of them really, is there would be skepticism amongst the audience, and people would get up afterwards and they'd say, well, thank you very much, Paul, but really that's a load of hooey and nonsense, isn't it? And I mean, not quite as rude as that often, but sceptical, and any of the questions were sceptical and rather dismissive of this as not proper interesting work, nothing that a chap like me should be doing. But then you'd go out for coffee, and people would sidle up to me and they'd sort of do this. They'd look round to make sure no one was listening, and then they'd say, actually, I think you're right. So what I picked up was there's a schizophrenia in the medical profession about this. The body politic says it's all nonsense, but individuals know it isn't. And individual people who've worked with sick folk for a long time, particularly general practitioners or people in hospices, lots of nurses, know that something else is going on, but you can't talk about it publicly. So there's this kind of public-private divide in the medical profession about healing, and that we need to bust that. We need to bust through that barrier and let people talk openly, I think. So that's healthcare professionals. We didn't do very much formal research with them, but I've a lot of those experiences. The healers themselves were interesting about, what is healing. They would often look at me very puzzled when I asked that sort of question. And often they didn't care. They said, well, I don't know what's going on, but it works. Why do you need to investigate it? Why do you need to research it? It works. We need to be doing it. It helps people. What are you on about? But getting below that, mostly they would talk about energy flow or energy balancing, sometimes about a deity, a higher being, being a part of it. But the general, or the people I worked with, the general concept was that the healer was somehow a channel, and that it wasn't them, but they were a channel for change of energy or change of state in some way. And obviously there are all sorts of nuances around that. But then we thought, well, I wonder what the general public think. And that's the most interesting bit, I think. So a group of us decided we'd ask Joe Public what healing was. We did our first pilot study in the Eden Project in Cornwall. With permission, with ethics approval, all those good things. Went down there for a day, 4 of us went down there for a day, and just asked passers-by what they thought healing was. And we'd agreed we'd try 3 techniques. We'd try getting them to say what it was into a recorder, to write down what they thought it was, or to draw a picture of what they thought it was. And the only one that worked was drawing a picture. People couldn't talk about it, really. They certainly couldn't write down what they thought it was, but they could draw a picture. And that's really weird, isn't it? So I well remember one of the first families I accosted there with my crayons and paper. A family of 4 parents, a teenage daughter and a younger son. And I said, what the spiel was, can we have a few minutes of your time for a research project? Don't tell them what it's about. I want you to draw the first image that comes into your head when I ask you a question. And we can talk about the image. That was the protocol. And then the signed consent came afterwards, because we didn't want to prime them by saying healing, as people start thinking. So what does the word healing mean to you? First thing that comes into your head, I don't know, images coming into your heads, maybe, I don't know. I should have tried that. Silly me. And this family that sat there, the parents looked a bit confused and took up a crayon and looked at each other. And the teenage daughter said, yeah, I can do that. Took a couple of crayons, went off on her own. Came back a few moments later with this picture. I'll show it to the camera and I'll pass it round. It's got hands with a heart. And she'd scribbled on it, hands healing with love. I'll pass it round. And she came back to me, she gave me that picture, and she said, that's healing, and wandered on our way. And that's remarkable, isn't it? Well, we went on doing this all around the place. We did it in 3 or 4 different venues, and we've got well over 100 pictures. And I'm just going to pass a few round because they're rather fun. I want them back, by the way. And some of them have got writing on, but some haven't. And just pass them around and see what you make of them. That one probably won't make any sense to anybody, but there's lots more. I could have bought lots more. I won't bore you with too many more. But, so we extracted 3 main themes from this. One was that healing comes from above, from some power from above. One was that healing's about connections between living people, living things. And the third was that healing comes from within, that we've got the power to self-heal, we just need to activate it. So those 3 themes we extracted from these pictures and the stories people told about these pictures. but also there was a very strong theme of love through these examples. And the conclusion I came to was that the general public are much more on board with a metaphysical concept of healing than ever are the medical profession, and are much closer to understanding what the healers are doing than the medics, who are somehow isolated in their own little bubble and have not got a grip at all of actually what is the reality of the world, which is understood by the general public. And that was quite a revelation to me, I think, as the layers of my own medical bubble have slowly been peeled off, I guess. So that's all I want to say. I don't want to go on much longer. I'll give you a chance to ask questions or discuss things. But as I say, my thesis is that the medicine needs healing. Medicine's in a mess, I think. And that's not just about stuff like waiting lists here and so on. That's just organisation and politics. But medicine's in a mess because we are just car mechanics of a bit of the body. We're body mechanics. Medicine's lost its soul. It's lost spirituality. It does not understand that humans are spiritual beings. In fact, it rejects that whole idea that we are spiritual. It just rejects that. So where does that leave you? So it's kind of in a bubble. I mean, physicists have got through that. Physicists are now, as I understand it, open to, no idea what's going on, but certainly it's not simple. The medical profession's still stuck there. It still believes the brain produces consciousness, for which I think there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and a massive amount of evidence that that's not the case. But it still sticks to these belief systems. So it needs healing. It's got too expensive to be available to most people in the world because of drug companies and the rest. I'd love to give you a half-hour tirade about the horrors of the drug companies, but I won't do that. But they've got control. And so it needs to heal from within, but it also needs to let healers in. Healers are allowed in a little bit in certain places, particularly hospices, but by and large they're not. And it's rejected by the body politic, as I've explained. So why I've gone to the trouble of trying to write a book and going to the trouble of boring people like your good selves is that I really want that to change. So thank you for listening. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Could I just say that I have been petitioning the government and got absolutely no way. But you know where they say that, you know, that nobody knows how to reform the NHS except for the privatisation. Well, I think that they should renationalise the drug companies because it is the second biggest industry to oil. And the body doesn't recognise chemicals, it recognises foods. And there's a lot of foods, because I've studied alternative medication, and I've seen so many people get well on alternative medication. And I've watched so many people get very, very sick through the even the head of Big Pharma stated that that it wasn't in their interest to fix anybody because there's no money in it, and that's basically where the medical profession has gone.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's all about money, and I agree with you entirely. The pharmaceutical industry has hoodwinked us, really, but it's got everybody. Well, obviously not yourself, but I mean, it's got the society believing that they'll find a drug for any ill, which is outrageous.
Yeah, and you know something? In China, the doctors are paid by the amount of people that they have well on the books. So if they've got 90% of people well, they get paid top dollar. If they've got 45% of the people well, they don't get as much money.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive in this country for doctors to fix anybody.
No, in fact, in a sense,
it's in
there's
their
disincentive.
interest for you to be sick.
Yeah. No, that's right. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, when you're healing, I don't know if you lay on hands or I do physiotherapy, but do you have a feeling of intent? I mean, I use that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think good intention is everything. lady was asking if people put hands on. Well, some people do and some people don't, is the short answer to that. So most of the healers I've worked with and been with actually don't put hands directly on you. I mean, the lady who did my knee did, but most of them haven't. But I think the good intention is kind of the key. I mean, that relates to the love, of course, but the real desire for the other person to get better is a crucial feature of it, I think. Is that your question? Not quite.
Not quite. It's if I do a massage.
Yeah.
I can feel hot spots and cold spots.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
And the intent I have is to get the energy working. The
Yes.
whole body is one energetic being.
So that's like Reiki then.
Yeah, but I don't do Reiki. I do full massage.
You do it.
And
Yeah. Sure.
And you can actually, by breathing with your clients, so you can pull out hot spots and cold spots, and they can feel it as you do it.
Yes.
But I think you have to be quite intense personality, and you have to have the intent. When you say love or something, well, you just have the intent of getting this thing flowing.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Sure. No, I
push with you, you know.
Yeah, I think that's fun. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I agree with you, and you know, when I was taught to do it without hands on, but you can still feel things even though your hands aren't on the other person. You can feel the hot spots. You know, those are related in healing speak to chakras, but which is fine. But I don't understand any of that, and I don't think anybody really understands any of that, and that's fine. I think, you know, I don't think we should be trying to fit it into an explanatory model necessarily. I think we should just be comfortable with the phenomenology, if you like. So these are phenomena that occur that help other people. Let's be content with that, I think. So.
The lady who did your knee.
Yeah.
What modality was that? And also, another question. You said that she had felt drained afterwards.
Yes.
Is it an issue if healers feel drained, or you know that might be construed as some form of art?
Yes. So this lady would have described herself as an energy healer, and she thought that what she was doing was channeling energy from outside into my body to help my knee heal. Now, the draining thing is very interesting, I think, because when I went on a course to learn how to do healing, they spent quite a lot of time talking about the need to protect yourself from negative energy and from this draining phenomenon, and how to make sure that you weren't negatively affected. And the people who trained me were actually rather dismissive of some other techniques, including Reiki, because they say that people don't get taught properly how to protect themselves and how to look after themselves. And actually that's one of the reasons that I don't try and do it, because I don't think I know enough to look after myself if I tried to do that. Again, I don't understand it.
After doing massage, we pour water over our arms
to
get rid of that
Yeah.
energy, and you can feel it clogging up your wrists.
Yeah, right.
And
Interesting.
that's they do that in other countries too.
Yeah.
In Thailand and.
Yeah. Well, one of the techniques they taught me was after you've done stuff, even though you've got your hands on, you've got to, you know, which is much the same thing.
And you can actually shake it out.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the horse. Did you go back and revisit the horse? And I think what I want to ask is, what did the horse think?
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't go back to the stables. I did go back and reconnect with the horse a second time, because I was a bit, you know, what's happening, and I wanted it to be the fault of the horse healer and not me, and she wanted me to do it again with her some distance away just to prove it was me, and it was. What did the horse think about it? Well, the horse, when I was connected with it, was calm, was feeling good. I have no idea how it felt afterwards, because I wasn't connected with it anymore. So I don't know. And whether its digestive problems got better or not, I don't know. I don't know.
So yeah, another question. Do you think there is a value in opening a conversation with the medical profession? I mean, how on earth do you do that? I mean, I'm sure that's a question you're asking yourself.
Yes, it is a question I'm asking myself. So is it worth it? Yes, absolutely. How does one do it? I think one does it bottom up rather than top down, if you see what I mean. The body politic of medicine doesn't want to have anything to do with this.
Yeah.
The body politic of medicine is controlled by the pharmaceutical industry and the devices industry almost completely. So they decide what drugs we should have, what tests we should do on people.
And what gets taught in
and
universities.
what gets taught in universities. They decide all of that.
Yeah.
So in a quite subtle way, I mean, they're clever people. So I think top down's impossible.
Yeah.
But bottom up is not. So as I say, you know, the people after coffee sidling up to me, those are the people we need to be working with.
Yeah.
And from bottom up through the people, and there's, you know, I think, I mean, I don't know this. I mean, one never knows. You know, we all get prejudiced into thinking that what we're interested in is terribly important and terribly prevalent. I get the sense that lots of doctors are receptive to this and that would be willing to say so in a crowd, but not on their own. So I think somehow stimulating a bottom-up movement is what we need to do. I mean, what are my books going to do that? Not. Yeah,
Well,
it's really
one little
difficult.
thing, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's going to take a lot of different things.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Coming from a lot of different angles.
Yeah.
Needs to happen soon, though. I think.
I think there's also a lot. I mean, we are the consumers, aren't we?
Yeah.
And if we're not getting what we want,
Yeah.
eventually at some point, I guess more people are going to
Yes.
make other choices.
Yes, and of course, a colossal proportion of the population does use alternative approaches. So, I mean, I think that is happening.
Yeah.
Again, I think statistics are very hard to come by, and it's very interesting as working as a doctor, actually, that you talk to patients about this stuff, and they are very nervous of admitting to a doctor that they've been to an alternative practitioner. The very word alternative is somewhat pejorative, isn't it, really? But you know, they don't like to admit that to a doctor, but there is a massive usage.
Yeah.
So people are doing that.
Yeah. Because it's interesting in the States where they now have this movement to functional medicine.
Yes, functional medicine. I don't think I want to start in on functional medicine. I'm not at all sure about it.
It's a step away from
Yeah, it is.
pharmaceutical
Yeah,
medication.
it is. But I have my doubts. But that's a slightly different topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you got sick, would your first protocol be to a healer, not a doctor?
That's an excellent question. It would entirely depend what it was. So, you know, we are very good as doctors at some things. If I have a cataract, I'll go to a doctor to get it removed. If my knee does fall to bits, I might well get my mate to replace it. if I'm not feeling very well, I won't go anywhere near a medical practitioner. That's the crux of it, I think. And so what's happening is that, you know, certain specific things, fine, but general suffering and sickness, the medical profession is completely useless at, in my view.
Could I ask you why you didn't get your knee operation?
Well, because it was very much better after the healer had worked on it. We got a few minutes, Carl?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you another story about my knee. The healer worked on it. A terrible mess, actually. So, one of my daughters is a doctor, and I'd been to stay with her just before I went to the healer, and I couldn't get up and down her stairs because my knee was so bad. And she'd said to me, "Oh, for goodness sake, go and get it replaced, you know, you silly old man." And after I'd been to the healer, I went back and stayed with her again, and I was dancing up and down the stairs, no trouble. And I went off to go for a walk to the pub with her, and she suddenly looked round and she said, "You're walking properly, you're getting up and down the stairs. You went and had your knee replaced without telling me, didn't you?" And I said, "No, Claire, no, I've been to a healer." And she's a doctor, and she looked at me and she's got a look. And that look said, "My father has completely lost his marbles. He has lost it, lost the plot." And then she kind of stopped herself and she looked at me and she said, "You're serious, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I am." She said, "And have you had it re-x-rayed?" And she said, if you have it re-x-rayed and the x-rays got better, we're all buggered, aren't we? I'm sorry about her language. I blame her mother. But what she meant by that was that if a healer can turn an x-ray round like that, the whole sort of structure of medicine is undermined. And I said, "Well, no, I haven't had it x-rayed because I'm not interested in the x-ray. I'm interested in whether it hurts or not, and it doesn't hurt anymore." However, I did have it re-x-rayed 2 or 3 years ago, and there didn't seem to be much wrong with it.
And could I ask you another question? When you were kidnapped,
Yeah.
Did you have post-traumatic stress disorder after coming out of it?
Yeah.
How long for?
Years.
Years. And did you get any treatment for it?
No.
No.
Well,
Did you just have to deal with it yourself?
yeah, it depends what you call treatment.
Well, basically,
the medical profession didn't seem to me to have anything to offer.
Yeah.
So I didn't use the medical profession. I didn't use counselling either because that didn't seem to have anything to offer me. I used things like nature.
So you would have been in probably a lot of shock, and were you in fear for your life? Were they,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were going to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be shot several times.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Yeah, but it must have been. I mean, it must have been mind blowing, really. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
With Stockholm syndrome or something like that.
We had some Stockholm syndrome experience, actually, getting to know some of the lads who were walking around with their Kalashnikovs. They were all kids who didn't know which country they were in, actually, and mostly, of course, we couldn't really communicate with them, but there were one or two who knew a bit of English and kind of got friendly with them, or tried to. Strange stuff. It's very strange.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
I have a problem. Some years ago, I spent a month in hospital in India.
Oh right.
A palm reader came round, reading people's palms. He looked at my palm and said, "No money, no love, short life." So the problem.
Well, he got that wrong, didn't he?
Well, that is the crux of it. How come I'm still here? I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I mean, I was in a bad way actually with hepatitis, so it was serious. But hey,
Maybe he had good intentions.
He wants to cheer you up.
Yeah, maybe he healed you.
wow.
It's your here.
Excellent. Yes, sir, please.
Final question.
Final question.
Would you consider hypnotherapy healing?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We need to wrap up. I'm actually, I find hypnotherapy extremely interesting, and I thought I try quite hard to understand hypnosis and hypnotherapy because I thought it might be a doorway to understanding more about healing, until I had a light bulb moment and realised that nobody understood hypnotherapy at all, or what the hell was going on with hypnosis. That was a bit of a light bulb moment. Oh, I see. This is just more phenomenology that people are trying to explain scientifically, and nobody knows what the hell's going on with hypnotherapy. So once I got that, I mean, I may be wrong, but once I felt that was how it was, I sort of stopped taking too much interest in it. But yeah, it can certainly be very effective. No doubt about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.